I would like you all to meet Andre Obradovic. Andre is a leading Australian-based health and wellness coach. He specialises in weight loss, endurance and sleep, and has worked with hundreds of clients to help them reach their health goals. So welcome, Andre.
Thanks, Ros. Nice to see you again.
Yeah, it's great to see you. And I'd just like to let the listeners know that Andre was my health coach, and he has successfully kick-started my weight loss journey, where I lost the first 9 kilos in a period of 3 months. And this has had an incredible flow-on effect to so many aspects of my life. So I've lost that 15 kilos now. I'm healthy, normal weight. I've normalized my blood pressure. Listen to this. I've come off antidepressants. I sleep well for 8 hours a night without sleep apnea. I scarcely drink alcohol. I play sport several times a week for 2 to 3 hours a day. And I practice yoga and meditate daily. So none of this would have happened without the initial weight loss, which you helped me to achieve, and all the work that we did to actually prioritize my health. So this has happened gradually over time, but I would like to thank you from the bottom of my heart, because you were the one that really got me unstuck and started this whole midlife journey towards better health. So a huge shout out to you, Andre, and much gratitude for all the work that you do.
Oh, thanks, Ros, for your really kind words. But the important thing is you actually did the work. All I did was ask you the right questions. And the important thing is you actually realized that something was not right. So a lot of people normalize being overweight or being on medication or drinking alcohol. You actually realized, maybe the pain was big enough for you to realize you had to do something, and then you actually did it, and then when we finished, you kept going. So well done to you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a dual effort, that's for sure. So you've worked with over 500 individuals now during your time as a health and wellness coach. What types of issues and scenarios are people coming to you with?
I mainly work with men. I do work with some women, as you know, you were one of my clients. Not too many women, but with men, it's mainly, unfortunately, a lot of it is around alcohol consumption. It's around men that normalize. They have this belief that once I get a bit older, everyone else in the office or where I work is overweight. All my friends, my mates are all overweight. They normalize that and therefore don't think there's a problem with it. And they talk in their head that, oh, well, I'm old, so I'm a bit sore when I get up. I can't exercise anymore. I can't, it's just normal to have this happen. So the biggest thing I work with men on is this belief that they don't have to put up with being sick, and being overweight isn't actually healthy. And the other problem is they go to doctors, and doctors won't have a hard discussion with them. And if they do, their advice is stop eating fat, eat more, eat less fat, eat low fat, and exercise more. And that is totally the wrong message, because all that does is leave people starving. But most doctors won't even say that. And the other thing is they get blood tests done, and the doctors won't actually, if they're low in the range, but they're in range of the requirements, the doctors won't say, oh, well, that's okay, but you need to be higher on vitamin D, or you need to be lower on insulin. So they're the sort of things I work with men on. But a big thing is around this habit change, around making them realize they can actually eat properly. And uneducating them on all the rubbish they've learnt
Yeah.
over many years about this fear of fat, and that you have to eat cereal and breakfast foods and things like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of misinformation out there, and often the model that we're working in is we don't really step in until there's a big problem, a significant health issue, and often sort of borderline blood test results are left alone, and there's just so much we can do to step into that space and prevent problems before they really take too deep a root. So I'm wondering, when we're making changes to our lifestyle and developing new ways of doing things, we've really got to have a really pretty clear idea of why we're doing it, so that we can keep going when it gets tough. So what would you say are the key motivations for prioritising weight management and health improvement?
Well, that's a good question. So one of the things I ask the women and men I'm working with is if they have kids, how old they are, or if they've got grandkids. And one of the questions I say is, well, okay, so you're telling me you're already, so I ask people, how much weight do they want to lose, or if they're overweight, what's that about? And they say, well, I need to lose 15 kilos, right?
Yeah.
And I say to them, okay, well, firstly, most people underestimate how much they need to lose. So it's actually probably more like 20. And then they're like, well, actually, yeah, you're probably right. So I say to them, well, okay, so you're 45 now, and your daughter, if she gets married, will probably get married in 15 years or whatever. That means you're going to be 60. So I say to them, so if you don't change what you're doing now with your habits, what do you picture when you're 60 standing at the wedding with your daughter, or walking down the aisle with your daughter when you're 60? What's that going to be like?
Yeah. Great.
And there's often stunned silence.
Yeah, so they're looking ahead. What are things going to look like if I continue on this trajectory?
Yeah. And then for some of them, because some people I work with like it pretty blunt, others like it a bit softer. I was pretty soft with you, I think. I don't think I was too blunt.
We're all pretty different. Yeah. I don't think you ever really got too hard with me.
No,
but
so if they want it blunt, I say to them, because most guys do, they just want it blunt. And that's why a lot of them come to me, because I was in the army and I'm still in the army part-time. They like that direct approach.
They respond to that.
Yeah, I say, okay, so here's what is going to happen. I say, this is what is going to happen if you keep drinking alcohol and you keep eating rubbish, is you're going to be a diabetic. You might have one leg, you might be in a wheelchair, or you're going to be watching the wedding from the hospital while you're having kidney dialysis.
Oh my gosh.
Or you're going to have,
it's confronting.
And I'm like, and the only reason that's happened is because you haven't prioritised your health, and you eat rubbish food, and you drink alcohol, and you watch TV till 11 o'clock at night, or watch Netflix.
It's extraordinary, because that's what the research is showing. Like, overweight and obesity, there is a clear link between that and the development of chronic disease like diabetes, stroke, cardiovascular disease. And I think we know that, but sometimes that doesn't translate into applying it in our own lives. And I think that's such a powerful exercise to do with your clients, because it forces them to look at their own life. What's it going to be like for them, and what would it really look like? I think, it's really powerful. Let's look at stress. What role does stress play in our health or ill health, and why is it so important to reduce it?
Yeah, okay, great. Well, there's two types of stress. There's acute stress and then there's chronic stress. And acute stress has a purpose. If we are in a dangerous situation, our body needs to get adrenaline, cortisol,
Yeah.
all those hormones that are there for that acute stress reaction where we go into the fight or flight, and our autonomic nervous system switches into that parasympathetic state where we actually get, active, and we want to be in that response situation. But if we have that all the time, we have elevated levels of cortisol. And cortisol, if it's chronic, has a whole range of metabolic health issues. So if we have high levels of cortisol, which is a stress-induced hormone that's there to help us, if we have that all the time, that limits our body's function, because our body thinks that we're going to die, that we're in danger. Now, when our body thinks that we're in that state of danger or stress, our reproduction capability is reduced. So often women that are having IVF are stressed about their job, about not having babies, about whatever, and they actually can't get pregnant. Because why would the body want a baby to come into the world if they're stressed? So our body's smart. It's just we're stupid, right?
Yeah.
Same with men. Men necessarily can't have sex if they're highly stressed. Things don't work because the body's like, we don't want to make babies. We want to run away from danger or go and fight.
Yes.
So the other thing is our digestive function is reduced because our body doesn't care about eating food and digesting food when we're running away from a fight. It also reduces our fat burning. So we have two primary ways of fuel burning. One is glucose and one is fat. When we're running away from danger, the body switches off our fat burning, which is our preferred state of fuel use, and it wants us to have glucose. Now, when we're burning sugar, it's a very dirty fuel. It makes oxidization, inflammation happen in the body, and glycation in our cells. Whereas when we're burning fat, it's a very clean fuel and it lasts a long time. So chronic stress essentially drives us to metabolic health conditions like diabetes. It also limits our sleep, because if we've got high cortisol, what will happen? 2 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, we will wake up because our cortisol levels are elevated. Now, what I do with my clients is I have a journal they go through, and if it looks like they've got some sort of adrenal dysfunction related to stress, we do a saliva test to look at their cortisol and melatonin levels. And the last thing on this is if we do have high cortisol, we will have low melatonin because our body is like, we're in danger. We don't want to go to sleep. Therefore, we don't need melatonin. So once we drop, and I've been through this myself in recent years where I was in a significant stress situation, when we drop the cortisol, and there's a whole protocol we can use to do that. When we drop the cortisol, the melatonin increases, and then we actually have better sleep. So stress is very bad if it's chronic.
Yeah.
And the last thing I'd say is there's a thing called the HPA axis dysfunction, or HPA axis loop. So this is where you have your hypothalamus, your pituitary gland, and your adrenal glands all work together to understand what hormones need to be flowing at what levels based on stress or relaxation. And if you've been in a chronic stress state for a long time and then you're not, because your body's been in this loop of always thinking it's under stress, the communication path doesn't work properly, so you actually will continue to have high cortisol. So you actually have to fix that, but you first have to know that it's a problem, and we do that first by doing a saliva test. And then there's a whole protocol that we can use, which includes some supplementation using adrenals and glandular products, and then also meditation, nasal breathing, and things like that.
It's fascinating. And it actually makes so much sense. When your cortisol's high, your melatonin's going to be low, because they're sort of opposite. They're wanting your body to do the opposite. So it is all interrelated, isn't it?
And the thing is, if people go to doctors will just say, here's a sleeping tablet.
Yeah, that's right.
They won't even talk about having...
No.
They'll test your cortisol through blood tests, but that's nowhere near as good as a saliva test at midnight to actually check your levels at midnight when you want your cortisol in range, not over.
Yeah. Oh, that's terrific. I imagine that provides a lot of hope to people who might be listening, who are struggling with their sleep, and they know they've got a lot of stress going on in their life. So let's look at weight loss specifically. Many individuals, and I imagine a lot of the listeners, would have tried numerous diets without long-term success. And a lot of people believe these days that eating a low-fat diet and exercising should naturally lead to weight loss. That's not always the case. What approach do you recommend for breaking this cycle of weight loss and regain?
Yeah, okay. So the first thing is people have to ask themselves some questions about, because it does make sense. If you eat fat, you get fat, and if you eat fat, you have a heart attack, right? Okay, so it totally makes sense, and that's what we've been taught for 30, 40 years since President Eisenhower had his heart attack. That's when they started to change the food guidelines for the totally the wrong reasons, right? So I try, and my approach is, first we do a food and mood journal where they write down what they've been eating, they don't change it, and then how they feel. And you look at the rubbish they're eating, and then I ask them, well, okay, tell me what's healthy in what you've eaten, and we go through every day. And like I did one yesterday with someone, and like out of 7 days, there was like 2 days where there was something healthy. That's it. So you've got to re-educate people about what is healthy. And then what I try and explain to them is protein. We need protein to stop us being hungry, and we need protein to enhance our muscle and get more lean body tissue and reduce fat. So the approach I use with people is, let's get rid of the processed foods. Let's firstly introduce 3 meals a day, because most people are eating 5 or 6 times a day. So I explain about the impact of insulin and the blood sugar roller coaster. And the first week or two, it's like, okay, just stop eating processed food, and I want you to eat meat and green vegetables 3 times a day, eggs, blah, blah, and have bone broth in the morning. And then once they get, and then for most men, it's like, and lose a kilo a week, because that's what most of them do if they've got to lose 20 kilos. And then after a week or two, people will be like, oh, I'm not hungry, so I didn't eat breakfast. And I say, well, don't say breakfast, because that's invented by the food industry. It's just first meal or second meal or third meal. Then I actually say, okay, well now when you get up, just have a bone broth or a black coffee if you need it, and then have your first meal at 11 o'clock. So we introduced what we call a time compressed eating window. And this is, the aim of this is to reduce the amount of insulin in our blood, because every time we eat, insulin comes in from the pancreas, and that takes glucose out of our bloodstream, and it stores it either in the liver, the muscles, or in our fat tissues, and most of it goes into our fat tissues, which is why we put on weight. We don't put on weight because we eat too much red meat or too much fat. We get put on weight because we have too much insulin, and insulin is increased in our body when we have more sugar. So all that so-called healthy foods that dietitians and food companies try and sell us, grains and bread and Carmen's healthy muesli bars, which are all full of sugar, but they're marketed as health foods because they don't have fat in them, are totally bad for us, and they're the things that cause us to be overweight. Now, what we need to do, though, is once someone's lost the majority of the weight, then we need to make sure that if they're exercising, they're actually getting enough protein. And getting enough people don't eat enough protein. And you need to eat protein to not lose muscle mass when you're overweight and doing intermittent fasting. But the key thing we have to be careful with is, as an example, for 10 years, I was only having 2 meals a day, but I was training a lot, doing Ironmans and stuff like that. And I couldn't shift this fine layer of fat I had on my stomach. And the reason is my metabolism slowed down so much that my body got used to just having, it was like, I can't get rid of this small bit of fat because I don't know when I'm going to get the next food because my metabolism had slowed down so much. So recently, probably 9 weeks ago, I started working with a bodybuilding coach, and I'm eating 3 big meals a day. My body fat's reducing, my muscle is getting bigger. I'm putting on weight, but it's muscle, not fat. And and I'm much warmer. Often I'm very cold. So that's an indication of a slow metabolism. So I've tweaked that for me, but you have to do that once you've lost your weight, but protein's very important. So to answer your question, I adopt a low carb approach to nutrition with my clients for the first 12 weeks, where we get rid of gluten, processed foods, we reduce alcohol, bread, pasta, rice, muesli bars, cereals, oats, all that sort of stuff. And we then incorporate intermittent fasting or time-restricted eating. And then as they lose their weight, we change that approach accordingly.
I remember going through that very approach with you, and I did struggle in those first few weeks. I really struggled because I loved bread and I loved oats and I loved croissants and I loved biscuits, all of that. And honestly, somehow you got me through that. I'm still not even sure what you did. But
I didn't do anything. You did.
But
I remember some of those conversations, actually. I clearly remember some of those chats.
Yeah. Anyway, what I can say to people listening is it's possible, even for me with the sweetest of tea. It's possible. So what are the options or services that you provide to help people make progress on their health?
Okay, all right. So I'll explain that, but the first thing I'll explain is that I'm not just some guy who decided to do this, right? I'm an executive coach with the International Coaching Federation. So apart from running my own business with helping people get healthy, I actually do executive coaching. So I take that executive coaching skill, which I have, which is a high level qualification, and I bring that into the health coaching. So I know how to elicit change, how to ask the right questions. And I blend that with my qualifications as a Cert 3 and 4 personal trainer and the work I did with the Primal Health Coaching Institute. So bundle that all up to deliver a service. So I primarily do one-on-one coaching, and that's a custom program which can be anything from 6, 12, 18 weeks or longer. And that is basically where they have me on tap almost 24/7. We do a formal meeting every week on video. We track food, we set goals. I work with their doctors to get bloods done. If we need to do saliva tests, we do saliva tests. If we need to do stool tests to look at their bowels and their microbiome, we do all of that. So that's sort of like my signature program, and that's what I think about 650 people have done in about 8 years. But then I also do have do-it-yourself programs, a 21-day and a 12-week program, which people can add coaching into. And that is all delivered on an app with a whole program. And that's more for people that have the motivation. They don't need pushing, but they want to learn and start doing it themselves. So they're the key things. And when we're doing the one-on-one coaching, what often happens is, after 3 or 4 weeks, people nail the food, and then they start bringing a whole lot of other baggage or issues into the sessions. So it could be relationship stuff, it could be work stuff, it could be sleep. So primarily it's about eating right, sleeping right, and reducing alcohol and bringing in appropriate movement or exercise, because that's different for everyone. So people ping me and say, I'm not much into exercise, but I know I have to exercise to lose weight. I'm like, really? Okay, well, do you have a dog? Yeah, okay, so all I want you to do is walk the dog for half an hour twice a day. I don't have to go to the gym? No, not yet, because you're 30 kilos overweight, mate. You're going to injure yourself. So that's basically the approach, one-on-one and do it yourself.
Fantastic. And we're all individuals, so we all have different stuff going on in our life, and there's different times when one might be more suitable than the other, and it's great that you work with people on an individual basis. So many people find it difficult to make these changes in the middle of the life that's going on for them. I mean, it would be fine if we had nothing else going on, but the reality is that people might have shift work, people might be surrounded by friends and family who have unhealthy eating or drinking habits. Do you have any helpful tips for people sort of navigating these situations? And how can they socialize as well without sabotaging their health goals?
Well, that's a really, really good question. So social interaction and judgment are problems people have. So people assume that people care about what they do, but in honesty, most people don't give a shit.
They're too busy worrying about themselves. Yeah,
whether someone's eating bread or someone's eating pasta or whatever, most people don't give a shit. So one of the big problems I find is that people don't want to disappoint people, right? And they assume that people care about what they're eating. So here's some examples that I work with people on. Italian guy, his grandmother always loves to cook pasta for him. He's trying to lose weight.
Yes.
He goes there. He doesn't want to disappoint his grandmother. And I say, okay, maybe you could have this conversation with your grandmother. Maybe you could say, Nonna, my doctor has asked me to stop eating wheat because it makes my tummy feel sore and it's not good for me. I love your pasta, but I'm not going to eat it. I'll bring some steak or salad instead. That has a vast difference to Grandma, I want to lose weight, because what does she do? She'll go, oh, Gino, you're beautiful. You don't need to, right? You don't want to have that conversation, right? Women who have girlfriends, I've worked with a girl, she's fantastic. For a couple of years, she hasn't drunk alcohol for nearly 600 days now. She felt like she was being pressured by her girlfriends when they'd go out for lunch to have champagne and cakes, right? But then she had the courage to ask some of them about how they feel, and they're like, oh, we don't care, just do what you want. So people, the whole social thing is a real issue, especially around alcohol. I've got lots of clients in New Zealand and England, and alcohol is a huge thing. So I just focus them on the dangers of it, the problems with it, the liver function that gets impacted. And I say to them, just have a glass with sparkling water and people will think you're drinking if you have to pretend that you're having a gin and tonic. But I say, really, you should actually have the courage to say to people, I'm not drinking because it's actually not healthy for me, and I'm not judging you. Because people assume if I tell people I'm not drinking, then they think badly of me. But you've got to be brave to have those conversations, and it's exactly the same with food.
I love that. That is just such practical advice. It's so helpful.
And the other really important one, because I know we don't have a lot of time left, is not saying to your kids, especially if you've got girls, oh, mum's fat and she's trying to lose, like if I'm the mum, oh, mum's a bit fat and I'm trying to lose weight. You don't want to say that. You say, I'm changing how I'm eating because I want to be healthier. I want to play sport more. I want to be able to run around and chase you kids. Or, my clothes are a bit uncomfortable on me. We should, in my opinion, if we've got young girls especially, we shouldn't be like, oh, mum's a bit fat or mum's overweight, we're trying to lose weight, I'm on a diet. We're not on a diet. We're just eating healthy food.
I agree.
So,
we talk about weight often as an aesthetic issue, and I would love to see that shift to it's a health issue. We're doing something for our health. It's a huge difference.
Yeah.
So if two quick things, just if somebody wants to start, they know that they need to make a change, they're overwhelmed by what that looks like, they don't know where to start, what would you say to them?
I would say get a book, and for a week write down everything you eat, what time you eat, when you go to the toilet, what time you get out of bed, how much time you're on TV, how much time you're on Facebook on your phone, how often you go for a walk.
Yeah.
And after 7 days, look at that and have an honest conversation with yourself and say, is this actually good for me? And what do I need to change? That would be probably the first thing.
Perfect.
The second thing would be get naked in front of a mirror and actually open your eyes. And if you don't like what you see, then do something about it. And if you want professional help, I can help, but it costs money, but you've got to do the work and I guarantee results. But look at yourself in the mirror, and if you're not happy, then don't blame anyone else, because you're the one that makes a choice to be healthy or not be healthy.
I love it. I love it. So if anybody wants to know more about you and how you might be able to help them, where can they find you?
AndreObradovic.com. They can go to my website. They can fill out a form with some questions that I can then get back to them, or they can sign up for the do-it-yourself programs online automatically, and that'll all just happen. And they can book a chat with me to talk about how I can help them. But they need to be committed to doing something about it.
Okay. So I'll put your details in the show notes and we'll leave it there. Thank you again so much for your time today and for the changes that you've helped me put into my life. I'm forever grateful. Thank you.
That's all right. Great to talk to you, and look forward to catching up sometime.
Will do. Thank you.
Okay, ciao.
Bye.